After a rocky start to the 2025 Formula One season, Red Bull Racing finally drew blood. In a race that was supposed to be McLaren's to lose, on a circuit that didn't traditionally favor Red Bull's strengths, Max Verstappen didn't just win. He crushed the opposition with cold precision, raising eyebrows not because of fortune, but because of what the car finally seemed to become. Controllable, predictable, and devastatingly fast over long runs. It was the kind of win that doesn't just count on paper, it resonates in the paddock. Christian Horner believes this wasn't just a lucky weekend. The team's upgrades at Imola, combined with previous changes from Saudi and Miami, have apparently unlocked something they've been chasing for months. Tire longevity that actually surpasses McLaren's. It's a turning point. But was this transformation genuine? Or a trick of the track? If you're trying to understand what this means for the championship, and whether Red Bull is truly back, this is the video you can't afford to skip. Subscribe now and let's dive deeper. When Max Verstappen crossed the finish line in Imola, there was something different about the victory. Not just in the margin, not in the number of pit stops, not even in the overtakes. It was in how he won. Because for the first time in the 2025 season, Verstappen didn't win because of track-specific quirks, or because others faltered, or due to a lucky break. He won with cold, calculated race pace that built lap by lap. It was a performance Red Bull had been trying to extract from the RB21 all year. And in Imola, they finally did. But to understand the weight of this moment, you have to look at what preceded it. The first quarter of the 2025 season was riddled with questions for Red Bull. Was their concept flawed? Had they fallen behind in aerodynamic evolution? Could the RB21 even compete with the surgically precise MCL39 from McLaren or Ferrari's ever-improving SF5? The numbers suggested Red Bull had a qualifying advantage on certain tracks, yes. But over race distance, especially in hot or high degradation conditions, they fell apart. Tire management, the bedrock of Red Bull's dominance during the 2022 and 2023 seasons, was suddenly a weakness. McLaren, by contrast, emerged as the team with the most consistent long-run pace. Piastri and Norris were able to control tire graining, distribute wear evenly across stints, and keep their pace stable even on aging compounds. That combination, alongside their increasingly refined high downforce package, made them the benchmark in race trim. For Red Bull to flip that narrative, they needed more than just small tweaks. They needed a structural shift in how the RB21 behaved across a full Grand Prix. That brings us to the triple update package that made the difference. Starting in Jeddah, then continuing in Miami, and culminating at Imola, Red Bull introduced a series of carefully sequenced changes. These were not headline-grabbing, ground-up redesigns. Instead, they were silent refinements, targeted aerodynamic modifications, and setup evolutions designed to reduce instability and improve tire wear. The most visible of these was a redesigned side pod layout in Imola, one that drew clear inspiration from McLaren's mid-wing cooling concept. But make no mistake, this wasn't about copying. It was about harmonizing airflow around the car's flanks and ensuring better airflow toward the rear floor. Why does that matter? Because tire degradation in F1 is as much about aero balance as it is about compound characteristics. When a car slides, even imperceptibly, it heats the surface of the tire unevenly. This leads to blistering, graining, or simply rapid surface wear. Red Bull's early season RB21 had a tendency to lose rear grip under load, especially through high-speed direction changes. Drivers like Verstappen had to compensate by altering their cornering approach, which in turn disrupted rhythm and increased tire stress. In Imola, that sliding, according to Christian Horner, was gone. And that might be the single most important revelation of the weekend. Because when you remove instability, you unlock racecraft. Verstappen was suddenly able to extract consistent lap times without spiking temperatures. His first stint, after a heroic launch and overtake around the outside of Piastri and Russell into Turn 2, was measured. While the chasing McLarens began encountering surface degradation after just a dozen laps, Verstappen pulled away with methodical consistency. That first stint wasn't a sprint, it was a message. A declaration that Red Bull could once again control tire life. The degradation rates, the delta across stints, the drop-off in grip, it was all back in Red Bull's favor. What made it even more significant is how this performance contrasted with the trend we've seen all year. Just 2 weeks prior in Miami, Verstappen led early but faded. The tire drop-off cost him the race. And even in Japan, where Red Bull claimed victory, the performance was borderline, not dominant. But Imola was different. And Verstappen knew it. In the post-race interviews, he didn't hold back. I do think the car felt a bit nicer, a bit more controlled to drive now, also in the long run. And that helped me, I think, also then look after the tires probably a bit more than normal. It wasn't just the win. It was the way he won. With control. But before we jump to conclusions, we need to scrutinize one uncomfortable truth. Imola is not a high-degradation circuit. Its layout, with smooth, flowing corners and relatively few heavy traction zones, tends to be gentle on the tires. It's possible, as Pure Watch hinted, that this was more of a track illusion than a true performance revolution. Watch was cryptic. Asked about the tire behavior, he said the wear and the surface of the tire were completely different than what we saw Friday. That's telling. Friday's long run suggested McLaren would dominate over race distance. But something changed. Whether it was rubbering in, track temperature, or the way Red Bull's setup responded to cooler conditions, we don't know. And Watch wasn't saying. He even joked, "I have no confidence anywhere," reflecting the volatility of performance this year. Still, Horner's tone was bullish. He believes the changes are more than skin deep. We've managed to address, hopefully subtly, some of the characteristics, he said, hinting that the team is beginning to understand the correlation issues that plagued them in 2024, when wind tunnel data failed to translate into real-world performance. If those gremlins have been exorcised, and the upgrades correlate correctly moving forward, Red Bull may have finally reconnected their design intent with reality. But let's not ignore what this means for the title fight. Verstappen's Imola win closes the gap to Oscar Piastri to just 22 points. A number that, on paper, is still significant, but psychologically, it's enormous. After all, Verstappen hadn't won in 4 races. Piastri and Norris had built momentum. And in Formula One, momentum often decides championships as much as points. If Red Bull has solved their tire issues and found a setup baseline that delivers repeatable results across track types, the narrative of the season may pivot rapidly. Yet there are still question marks. Monaco is next. And if Imola is gentle on tires, Monaco is the opposite, tight, twisty, and traction-heavy. Verstappen himself said, "I don't expect it to be a lot easier this time around." But we'll see. Red Bull struggled in Monaco in 2024. If they struggle again this year, it may suggest that Imola was circumstantial, not structural. But if they perform, if Verstappen can maintain control through a track that previously exposed Red Bull's weaknesses, then the rest of the grid is in trouble. This also puts McLaren in a curious position. They were the tire kings of 2024 and early 2025, but at Imola, they were outmanaged. Their pace on Friday evaporated. Piastri, starting on pole, had no answer to Verstappen once he was behind. And Norris, who'd previously gone toe-to-toe with Max in Miami, was never in contention. Is this a blip, or is McLaren's long-run advantage beginning to erode under the pressure of Red Bull's developments? And what of Ferrari? At their home race, they failed to deliver on expectations. Mercedes continues to float in the void, neither threatening wins nor entirely off the pace. That leaves Red Bull and McLaren as the 2 clear title contenders. But with every upgrade, every lap, every circuit, it's no longer about outright speed. It's about consistency, adaptability, and tire usage. And Imola may have been the inflection point where Red Bull, once again, pulled ahead on those fronts. So is Red Bull truly back? Or was Imola just a flattering snapshot in the right conditions? Will Verstappen claw his way to a 5th consecutive title, or will Piastri and Norris strike back with renewed force in Monaco? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more deep dive F1 breakdowns every race weekend.